Hi, John with eTrailer. If you're looking to do this with your Jeep Grand Cherokee, then check out the AirLift Load Lifter 1000 system installed on our 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Okay, so we got under the Jeep here so you can see what they look like. These are what the AirLift 1000 lift bags are going to look like on your Jeep. They slide inside the springs there on both sides. They have airlines. They're adjustable from 5 to 30 PSI. Now we've got some footage of this Jeep before we installed the air springs. We have footage of this Jeep after we installed the air springs. Both of those we hooked up to a camper and took it over our test course. We've got footage of us installing these. We'll show you how to install it. In the end here, we're going to find out, was it worth it to install these Load Lifter 1000 series on our Grand Cherokee? Okay, so we've got our Grand Cherokee out here, and before we install the AirLift system, we thought we'd hook up to our camper here, and we want to see what kind of an effect that it has on the factory ride height and the factory ride quality. So just to be practical about this and somewhat scientific, we're going to measure the ride height before we hook up to the trailer. I'm just on from the ground in the center of the wheel up to the wheel well, the bottom here, and we're at 35 inches. Now we'll hook up to our camper and we'll see how much it squats. And yeah, we have dropped 1.5 inches. Now that's going to affect your ride quality, that's going to affect your headlight aim going down the road. It's all of these things that we're going to correct with the AirLift system. Now, we have a test track here. We're going to hit some speed bumps. It's not really simulating a highway, but you're going to get a good idea of what the suspension's going through under there. Of course, it's not maxed out. What we're talking about is just improving safety and improving the ride quality. Let's hit the track. Now, today's SUVs do a good job with the towing, but the other job, and their main job, it seems, is ride quality and kind of a luxury ride. So when you do hook a camper up that's sizable, like the one that we have here, you're going to have a bit of reduced ride quality. It's definitely going to suffer a little bit. Not a lot. It handles the trailer fine, but there's always room for improvement. And this AirLift kit is just going to give you that factory ride height and that factory ride quality while towing, and that's what we're really looking for. We're looking to improve the safety and improve the ride. Get your headlights back in alignment where they belong. Okay, so with the camper hooked up, we aired the system up to 30 PSI, which is the recommended maximum. And I was kind of surprised to find that we only rose the back end up 1/4 inch. So we are not going to restore the factory ride height like I thought. At least not for the Grand Cherokee. So this is something to keep in mind. This is something that I thought this system would alleviate in the beginning, and it didn't. So the only thing left for us to do right now is to go take it on the test track to see if it's going to improve our ride quality. I'm expecting that it will. The way that the bags went in, and when we inflated them for the first time, it's not like the Jeep rose up like on some of the systems on the pickup trucks. It didn't do anything. I think this is very much a supplemental system, and it's going to be progressive in the way that as the Jeep suspension jounces and rebounds on the bumps, it's just going to be there for added support, maybe a little bit of sway control. I know that's going to be hard to come across on the camera, but let's go take it to the test track and find out. Okay, so we're going to get some first impressions here as we go over the bumps. I will say that it's more controlled on the bottom end of the bumps here, and so it does lead me to believe that if I took this out on the road, I would have a little bit better sway control. Overall, it's going to just be probably a little bit safer of a ride. This AirLift system is not going to increase your ride height or even maintain your ride height under load. But what it will do, probably pretty effectively, is help maintain stability while you're traveling down the road, if your camper's hooked up or if you've got a utility trailer hooked up that's loaded down. Kind of help with some sway, and definitely help in the bottom end of that jounce when you're hitting bumps. It's going to keep your Jeep from bottoming out so hard. Okay, so we've unhooked from our camper and we pulled the Jeep inside here. Now, to be honest, this is actually easier if you do it on your driveway. And if you're going to be doing that, you're going to need a couple of jack stands and a floor jack, because the idea behind this, you need to jack the Jeep up and then support it by the frames, and then we're going to lower the floor jack down so that the axles are relaxed. You want space in between the coil springs, because that's how we're going to get the AirLift springs inside and up. So we've got ours up and we've got it supported with a transmission jack back here. It's the same effect. So right now our coil springs are relaxed, and we did complete the passenger side just to show you kind of what we're going to expect with the driver's side. And this is what it's going to look like installed in between the coil springs here. The air line is going to come in through the bottom, and these springs just sit in here. They inflate from 5 to 30 psi, and they're going to restore our ride height for us. These will be teed together, and when we're running this line, it is flexible. That's fine. You need to watch for stuff that's moving, stuff that's hot, and stuff that's sharp. And we got to remember that this is installed on an axle. It's going to be moving up and down, so we got to leave enough line in here to flex with the system. So let's get started on the driver's side. Now our first step, we're going to come up underneath the coil spring here, and this is the lower mount. And the very first thing we need to do is, you'll see this plastic cross in here. We're going to have to get that out of here somehow. You can use any kind of saw, anything. I found just some long handle snips like this work just fine. This plastic is pretty pliable. We're going to cut this all the way out. Now on top of this is a rubber diaphragm that we're going to be cutting through, and of course we're doing all of this work so that we can get our air hose up through the bottom here. This plastic is about an inch tall, and that's what I'm going to be cutting up. We don't want to cut the outer edge of this. You just cut in the middle so we can go straight up through. So this is going to come out in pieces. That's the very center. And just keep working. Anything that's up here that's sharp that you think would rub against that airline, get rid of it. You can get a file up there if you want. Like again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just don't want any sharp edges that airline's going to rub on. Now once we have it clear around there, you can see there's a rubber diaphragm up there. I'm pushing down on it. We're going to take a razor knife and we'll cut an X in there. We need about an inch total to cut through. So you can do it from the bottom here. You just get a razor knife like this and poke it up one direction, then the other direction there. There we go. That'll work for us. Now we can take our air spring, and it's going to have a cap on it. We're going to take that off. This is the fun part. We're going to compress it and roll this thing up. Our goal is to try to get as much air as possible out of this thing. And once we do, replace the cap. That's going to give us somewhat of a hot dog shape. But now we can go put this and stuff it inside the coil spring. Now we're under the car, and we're going to hit the air spring from this side. Now remember, the valve stem has got to go down, so we're going to stuff this in through this center, or the lowest portion right here. This one is going to have the widest gap for us. So I'll take the edge and kind of fold it flat like this. We'll stuff it up in here. Now, when you're doing this, be careful. Your brake hose is on the backside back here, so just watch yourself as you're maneuvering this hose up, or the bag up through here. This part is not easy, and if you have a brake spoon at home, that's fine. You could use, I have a 1/2 inch extension here. It's dull on both sides, and you can use that to work it up when you get to a certain point. You don't quite need it just yet. Once we get it jammed up towards the top as much as we can, we can pull the plug. That's going to let air back into the cylinder. And then we just need to kind of maneuver it around so it can come back to its original shape in here. Now our goal is to have a gap down here so we can get our spacer in and lined up. When you do this, it probably will stay a little bit twisted right now. And as soon as we air it up, it'll come back to its shape. Just try to get it in this position here where we can get the spacer in. And the next shot that you're going to see is me hooking up the airline, and we're going to go through the hole at the bottom. Now, something I wanted to show you real quick. Number one, this airline here is super flexible, so you don't have to worry too much about hurting it. Don't be super rough with it, and it will cut, so be careful doing that. Secondly, the spacer, it kind of is tapered towards one side, and so we're going to be using the tapered side down. So we're going to have the wider spot is what the bag's going to be sitting on. So when we insert the airline through the bottom, it'll be like this. And then the last thing is these hose clips or hose clamps here. It's best if you get a pair of vice grips. Needle nose pliers really aren't wide enough to be able to hold it. So before we do this, we're going to go about right here, about an inch down. That way, once we get the airline on the barb on the bag, we can just simply slide the clamp up and we're done. So we'll slide the spacer in. I'm just going to have to block the camera just for a second. And we've got it sitting there, and I'll bring the hose up from the bottom. We've got tight quarters here, so you might be hard to see right now. But we're going to come up through the middle of the spacer. That's one thing you do need to make sure. This is where a pair of needle nose pliers will help you get the hose onto the barb. So we tried to get you another shot here so you can see where the hose clamp is in relation to where we need it to go. I use vice grips or a regular pair of pliers. We'll get on there just fine too. We just need to slide that up so that the hose is secured to the bag. Okay, now with both bags hooked up, and if you notice, I use the same line. I haven't cut the hose yet because this is the time when we're going to make a decision. Okay, the kit comes with a T, or so that they inflate the same, or you can have them inflate independently. And so you could have your bag, say the driver's side route over here and the passenger side route over here, and then you could have independent air pressures in each bag. Now, that's good I think if you have a pickup and a slide-in camper. A lot of the slide-in campers' weight will be heavier on one side, or offset loads if you're hauling. But in a Jeep like this, in an SUV, it doesn't make sense. So we're going to tee it so that both bags inflate together. I'm going to make the tee probably around here, about the middle of the transaxle, and we're going to end up shooting the line towards the back. When you cut this line, razor knife, we want our lines to be straight and sharp. So it doesn't have to be perfect, just right about here. And we're going to route the line on the driver's side the same as we did on the passenger side. So I'll come up and I'm going to take a zip tie. Those are included in the kit, and I'll zip tie it to this lower control arm here. And then we have a bracket, factory bracket here, that we'll zip tie it to and run it up and over. So we have our T, and I've routed the airlines to where they're going to meet right here. Don't forget to put your hose clamps on, and I've got two of them right here. I'm just going to cut in the middle. And then this is the line that's going to run to the front. And again, just get the hose over the barbs. It is pretty tight on these tees, I can tell you that. But that'll be plenty. It's just enough to bite into the barbs there. Okay, so you can see as the line came out, I zip tied it to the lower control arm and then to this factory bracket here, went up and over, and you can see our T up there. And then I went over that towards the back of the vehicle. You got to remember these Jeeps, they go off-road, and this isn't the best design, but we're going to keep it out of the way just for the safety of the airline. I mean, they're easily replaceable. I ran the line up, over, and around some other wiring that we installed, and we're out to the back of our 7-way connector. What I've done is I've removed the lower right bolt, and we're going to have the Schrader valve that we're going to connect to the air hose. We're going to have it come out right here. We'll have to drill a 5/16 hole, and that way we can adjust the air pressure in the airbags from back here. Now, on the off chance that you don't have a 7-way connector back here, or this won't work for you, we do have other brackets available here at eTrailer. Now, just so you know, before I start drilling, I'm going to lower the Jeep back down, because if you're doing this at home too, essentially you would be done and you could jack the Jeep back up, get the jack stands out of the way, and lower it back down to the ground. So this is what we ended up doing on our 7-way, and it does come with a cap, and it's exactly what you think of, just like a bicycle or your tire valve. It works the same way. You just slide those through. In the kit, you'll have a star washer, a rubber washer, flat washer, and nuts. So if you end up installing this somewhere else, it's fine, and do whatever combination you need to make it work for you. Now, they have a diagram on the inside the installation manual to show you how to set this up. But so we've got our setup like that. We're going to already have our tube run behind here. We're going to cut this and get the hose clamp on, and slide the hose clamp on. Okay, so we've got the hose on. Our next step here is we're going to inflate the bags and check for leaks. Now, for our test, I'm going to inflate this to 20 psi, and then I'm going to get some soapy water and spray around our hose fittings, make sure we don't have any leaks. So get you some soapy water and just spray where we cut, and you're going to see some bubbles out of this. This is not the best. Sometimes I like to use, if you got some blue window cleaner, it comes in a bottle. That stuff works pretty good too. But if this was leaking, you'd see big bubbles. So we're good here. You need to check every fitting that you did. Let's check the T's, and then you could check each fitting at the bags. Once you check your system for leaks and everything checks out okay, replace the Schrader valve, because you have finished your installation of the AirLift system. Now, one thing to keep in mind, even if you're not towing something, keep at least 5 psi in your bags. All this does is it keeps the bags tight against your coil springs, so that when you're going down the road empty, they're not going to chafe, they're not going to rub. And that was a look at AirLift Load Lifter 1000 system on our 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee.